In a quiet village far from the din of the cities, there lived a young man named Arjun. He was kind-hearted, but his life was haunted by an overwhelming fear of failure. This fear had deep roots, planted in his childhood when he watched his father struggle to make ends meet. Arjun was always worried that he too would fail in life, and this fear paralyzed him. He avoided taking risks, shying away from opportunities that could lead to growth and success. One day, while walking through the village, Arjun heard of a wise Buddhist monk who had come to stay at a nearby monastery. The villagers spoke highly of this monk, saying that his teachings had changed many lives. Arjun decided to visit the monk, hoping to find a solution to his constant fear. The next morning, Arjun set out for the monastery. The path was winding, and as he walked, his mind filled with doubts. What if the monk cannot help me? What if my fear is too strong to overcome? But he pushed these thoughts aside and continued on his way. When Arjun reached the monastery, he found the monk meditating under a large tree. The monk had a peaceful expression on his face, as if nothing in the world could disturb him. Arjun felt a sense of calm just being in his presence. The monk opened his eyes and smiled. "What brings you here, my son?" he asked. Arjun hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "I am consumed by fear, Master. I fear failure so much that I cannot move forward in life. This fear holds me back from achieving anything. Can you help me?" The monk nodded thoughtfully. "Fear is a natural part of being human," he said, "but it is how we respond to it that defines our path. Come, sit with me, and let me tell you a story." The monk began his story. Once in a dense forest, there lived a rabbit named Chatura. Chatura was known among all the animals as the most fearful creature in the forest. He was constantly on edge, worried that something bad would happen to him. Every rustle of the leaves, every crack of a twig sent him running for cover. One day, while resting under a tree, Chatura heard a loud noise. Startled, he jumped up and ran as fast as his legs could carry him. As he ran, he shouted, "The sky is falling! The sky is falling!" His panic spread quickly, and soon all the other animals in the forest were running alongside him, fearing for their lives. After a while, they reached the edge of the forest where they met an old wise lion. The lion watched the frightened animals with curiosity and finally asked, "Why are you all running in such panic?" Chatura, still trembling, replied, "I heard a loud noise and I thought the sky was falling. I was scared and started running, and everyone else followed." The lion, with a calm demeanor, asked, "Did you see the sky falling?" Chatura shook his head. "No, I just heard a noise." The lion then suggested they all go back to the spot where Chatura first heard the noise. Reluctantly, Chatura agreed, and the animals followed the lion back to the tree. When they arrived, the lion inspected the area and found that a large fruit had fallen from the tree, causing the noise that had frightened Chatura. The lion turned to the rabbit and the other animals and said, "You see, it was just a fruit that fell. Your fear made you believe something terrible was happening, and you ran without thinking. Fear is often like that. It tricks us into believing the worst, even when there is no real danger." Chatura felt ashamed of his hasty reaction, but the lion reassured him, "It is not wrong to be afraid, but we must learn to face our fears and understand them. Only then can we see things as they truly are and not be ruled by our emotions." From that day on, Chatura decided to face his fears. Whenever he felt scared, he would stop, take a deep breath, and look around to see if there was really anything to be afraid of. Over time, he became known not for his fear, but for his courage to face it. After finishing the story, the monk looked at Arjun. Like Chatura, your fear is often based on what might happen, not on what is actually happening. Fear has a way of clouding our judgment, making us see danger where there is none. But if you learn to face your fear, to examine it closely, you will often find that it has no real power over you. Arjun thought about the monk's words. He realized that his fear of failure was much like Chatura's fear of the sky falling. It was based on a belief that something terrible would happen, even though there was no evidence to support it. But Master, Arjun said, what if my fear is real? What if I do fail? How can I overcome that? The monk smiled gently. Failure is a part of life, my son. It is not something to be feared, but something to be learned from. Every failure brings with it a lesson, an opportunity to grow. The real failure is not in falling down, but in refusing to get up. He continued, when you fear failure, you are focusing on the outcome, on something that has not yet happened. Instead, focus on the present moment, on the effort you are putting in right now. This is where your strength lies, not in worrying about what might go wrong. Arjun nodded, beginning to understand. The monk's words were simple, but they held a profound truth. His fear of failure had been keeping him from trying, from taking action. But now, he saw that this fear could be transformed into something positive. Master, how can I turn my fear into strength? Arjun asked. The monk stood up and motioned for Arjun to follow him. They walked through the monastery grounds until they reached a small garden. In the center of the garden was a large rock, weathered by time and the elements. The monk pointed to the rock. This rock has been here for centuries, he said. It has faced countless storms, but it remains strong and unyielding. Your fear can be like this rock. Instead of letting it wear you down, you can use it to build your resilience. He picked up a small stone from the ground and handed it to Arjun. This stone is much smaller, but if you throw it in water, it will create ripples that spread out far and wide. Your actions, no matter how small, can have a big impact. Every time you face your fear and take a step forward, you create ripples of strength that grow stronger with each step. Arjun held the stone in his hand, feeling its weight. I understand, Master, he said. I must face my fear and take action, even if it's a small step. Over time, these small actions will build my strength. The monk nodded approvingly. Yes, and remember that you are not alone in this journey. Just as the rock endures the storms, you too will endure, and you will grow stronger with each challenge you face. As he prepared to leave the monastery, Arjun felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he was no longer afraid. He had the tools he needed to face his fears, and he was ready to take the first step. The monk walked with him to the gate and said, Remember, Arjun, that fear is not your enemy. It is a part of you, and it can be your greatest teacher if you let it. Face it with courage, embrace it with mindfulness, and transform it with compassion. Your fear will become your strength, and you will achieve more than you ever imagined. Arjun bowed deeply to the monk, filled with gratitude. Thank you, Master, for your wisdom. I will carry your lessons with me always. As Arjun walked away from the monastery, he felt a lightness in his heart. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was no longer afraid. With each step, he grew stronger, his fear transforming into the courage and determination that would guide him on his journey through life. Back in the village, Arjun began to put the monk's teachings into practice. He started small, taking on challenges that he would have previously avoided out of fear. Each time he felt fear rising within him, he remembered the monk's words and used mindfulness to stay calm and focused. Arjun also began to help others in the village, offering his time and support to those in need. Through these acts of compassion, he found that his own fears diminished, replaced by a sense of connection and purpose. Over time, Arjun's confidence grew. He no longer saw failure as something to be feared, but as a natural part of the learning process. He faced setbacks with resilience, learning from each experience and moving forward with greater determination. The villagers noticed the change in Arjun. They saw how he had transformed from a fearful young man into a confident and compassionate leader. Many of them began to seek his advice, and Arjun was happy to share the wisdom he had learned from the monk.